Hey there, welcome to my design channel. My name is Tamari. I'm a graphic designer and a part-time design teacher. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the term leading. Leading or leading. It is actually pronounced as leading, and you might be wondering why. In hand typesetting, composers use thin strips of lead to add vertical distance between the lines of type. That's where the term leading comes from. Nowadays, leading and line spacing are often used interchangeably, and it refers to a distance between one baseline and another. What is a baseline, you may ask? Baseline is a line where typography sits. Well, roughly speaking. Visually, leading plays an important role in the overall tone of the text block. If the leading is too tight, meaning the baselines are too close together vertically, the text block can look dense, heavy, and have a dark tone. On the flip side, if the leading is too loose, meaning there's too much white space, the text appears as separate lines. Neither extreme is ideal when it comes to body text and its legibility. The sweet spot is a balanced grayish tone. You can get a sense of the overall tone of the text block by zooming out. When you zoom out, if there are no separate lines or too much darkness, that's when you know you have an ideal setting. Choosing the right leading depends on various factors such as the design of the typeface, its size, how tall the X height is, whether there are ascenders or descenders, and so on. As a general rule for the body text, optimal leading is type size increased by 20 to 45%. However, this can vary depending on the anatomy of the typeface, especially the X height. Taller X height typically requires looser line spacing. Let's have a look at a text that is set in two different sans serifs. The type size is 12 and the leading is 15. The first example is Mr. Eves, which is known to have a relatively small X height. And the second example has a large, generous X height. So when you zoom out, we can see difference in the overall text tone. The second block of text looks denser and takes up more space. This proves the point that typefaces with larger X heights usually require more leading. And by increasing that leading, we occupy even more space on paper. This doesn't mean that we should avoid large X height to save up some space. Quite the contrary. Typically, large X heights are known to be more legible and look clear at any type size. There's another scenario where we may need some extra line spacing, and it's with the smaller type size. Smaller type size generally requires more leading for better legibility, whereas bigger type size, used in headlines for instance, need less line spacing. As the type size increases, the distance between lines seemingly increases more rapidly and white space becomes more apparent. So it's not uncommon to see headlines set, let's say, in 54 by 54. When the type size and the leading are the same, we refer it to as set solid. In bigger text, it's also common to have negative leading, especially if the text is set in all caps and there are no ascenders or descenders. By negative leading, I mean leading that is smaller than the type size. This allows us to tighten up some space. However, if we do have ascenders and descenders, it is logical to use bigger leading to prevent words from clashing with each other. You may also want to add some line spacing if you want to convey the feeling of lightness and exclusivity, whereas tight leading can create the feeling of tension and emergence. To summarize, there are three instances where we may need some extra line spacing. As mentioned previously, sans serif typefaces usually have larger X heights, so they require more leading. Heavyweights like bold and extra bold benefit from additional line spacing to make the text block appear less black. Reverse type, white on black, is harder to read, so it needs to be set more loosely. Therefore, a white on black combination requires more leading. Another factor that we need to take into consideration is the line width. Leading also serves as path for your eyes to follow when moving from one line to another. If you have long lines with tight leading, it can impact readability because it becomes challenging for the eye to transition smoothly between the lines of type, because there's no clear distinction between them. And without the right amount of leading, the absence of white space as a separator makes it harder for the eye to effortlessly move from one line to another. Here's a quick tip. Always adjust your leading manually and never rely on auto settings as they can be confusing. If you're using auto settings, you never know what your leading is unless you check it every time you change sizes. Sometimes you may see a leading of 14.4 for a 12-point type or 16.8 for a 14-point type. Confusing, right? When you adjust your leading manually, you have more control over the numbers, and adding or subtracting 0.5 is also acceptable. This is pretty much it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned something new. I'll continue to cover various design-related topics such as logo design, design principles, briefs, case studies, and so on. For that reason, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to turn the notification bell on. I'll see you in the next video.